What if the Minions had successfully introduced an adorable main character who beautifully emits their emotions despite not being able to speak? What if songs that accompanied kids' movies not only had thematically relevant lyrics, but had a heart behind it that escalated the effort put into the film? What if when you think Yellow Will Ferrell, instead of this, you think of this? I'm of course talking about
Upside down, I'll find the things they say just can't be found.
Pop quiz for those playing along at home. Here are 3 lesser-known works of art and 1 frame from Curious George. Try to guess which one is from the movie. Psych, they're all from Curious George. I got you with those little watermarks, didn't I? But the moral of the story is that this movie is freaking beautiful. Let's take a look at this scene, for example. You who have seen the movie know how great this opening is. However, near its end, when George is all alone, we get a beautiful look at the scenery, which zooms out and match cuts between the jungle and the city landscape. Look how good this transition is. Especially in this bottom left corner, it's simply magnificent. And we haven't even talked about this scene, but we'll hold off for a minute. As if the look of this film wasn't enough, the characters are incredibly developed. The main character can't even speak English, yet he gets one of the most emotionally expressive and incredibly heartbreaking scenes in recent memory. Although George's name is in the title, I think Ted is the real main character, as he has more screen time by himself and has the most character development. Speaking as a moderate fan of the Curious George books in the time of my childhood, it is my understanding that he has been only known as the Man in the Yellow Hat. And while I love such a silly name for a father figure from George's perspective, if the movie had attempted to cling to the source material so heavily that they couldn't even give him a name, conversations in the workplace would be borderline ridiculous. That's why I love that they named him Ted. Doesn't he just look like a Ted? I won't go too heavily into the arc he has from rejecting George to accepting and even loving him, but it coincides with the lesser developed but equally understandable love story. It wasn't necessary to the plot, but it feels like a realistic human interaction, and the screen time being devoted to George's relationship with Ted was the right call. Not to mention, Ted has the funniest lines.
Oh yeah? Well, that's not physically possible for me to do, so there!
The third best character is Junior. I freaking love this guy. All he wants is a parking lot and his father to be proud of him, and in that way, he's a perfect foil for Ted. Also, he's voiced by Uncle Ian. Need I say more? Now that this is a tier list, the 4th best character is Ivan. This guy was the original character design for Kingpin in Into the Spider-Verse that they had to tone down because it was too scary. In a fictional cartoon about a monkey in a hotel, there is little that stresses me out more than George evading Ivan's pursuit at the last minute every time. As far as tension goes, this is up there with Inglourious Basterds. I'm on the edge of my seat. 5th best is Bloomsbury, 6th is the Scenic Guy, and last is Maggie. Changed my mind. They ditch her in the 3rd Curious George, and I refuse to watch that still. Speaking of which, the sequels. This film is the first and only with Will Ferrell. After that, it's all downhill. At the end of the first, Ted and George go into space, so of course the poster for the next one has George in a spacesuit. But get this, the next one picks up back in the city. Not to mention the animation takes a fat dump, but I get it. I don't even think this one was released theatrically, so naturally there are budget cuts. But the sequel does not even come close in quality. Rapid fire things I liked before we get to the last topic. So quickly, although not biologically accurate, this chameleon is cool. I like George eating fireflies, this Godzilla reference, and the credits being drawn in the style of the books. And finally, the only scene I could recall in perfect detail going into this rewatch, the Holy Grail, the bathtub scene. As I am writing this, I realized I forgot Miss Plush Bottom on the notable characters tier list, so she would definitely go between Ivan and Bloomsbury. Anyway, the pristine white walls and clothing of Mrs. Plush Bottom set up her modern, classy style. Her love for opera coincides with this, showing she takes what she does very seriously. Not to mention the way she deals with these painters sets up she is a no-nonsense type of gal.
Hey, she fired us in song.
It still hurts.
So, when we see George approach the paint cans, we know the stakes are high, with the possibility of him getting caught. Yet, while we know what George is doing is wrong, we can't help but admire the beautiful murals and paint-colored bubbles that fill the apartment. George's artistic sense in the jungle was impressive, but here it's on another level. While it's not portrayed this way, the paintings on the wall suggest that George might miss his home, or if not, has not forgotten his origin in the slightest. Most crucial, his portrait of himself with Ted only magnifies the turmoil once we have to watch George get sent away. Pictures are the only way for George to express his feelings in such a high caliber, and boy does he deliver. For all the boxes this movie ticks, I think it to be one of the better animated films of the decade. I consider Ice Age 2 of the same year considerably uglier, but to be honest, its setting doesn't lend itself to as beautiful scenery, being that it depicts melting glaciers in a bowl devoid of substantial plant life. For comparison, Over the Hedge was also 2006, but my thoughts on that could be a whole nother video. Before that, though, I leave you with the wisdom of the ancient proverb. What's the difference between Neanderthal man and Cro-Magnon man? Linguistic competence and polychromatic cave paintings.